Hello, everyone.
A beautiful world. Some of us are small, some of us are tall, some of us are shy, some say hi to everybody.
Hello, thank you very much, Sarah. Hello, everyone.
Some of us like numbers, some of us love words, some of us watch football, and some of us watch the birds. This is our world. We're different but the same. We live and learn together. We get to know each other in our world. Some of us like music, some of us like cars, some of us draw pictures, looking at the stars. Some of us are scientists, trying to find a code. All of us can help a friend and be a hand to hold. This is our world. There's room for everyone. We learn to live together, and we have a lot of fun in our world. In our world. In our beautiful world. In our world. In our beautiful
Thank you, Sarah. It was a very nice way to start our meeting and our academic session today, because this is just the way our teachers start lessons with their children, with their students, right? So it's a pleasure for me to introduce to you Sarah Hilliard. This is not the first time that many of you have seen Sarah during this time that we are working with English Code. Actually, she was in charge of a previous webinar in which she also presented this new course book to us. And it is a pleasure for me to work with her again, just a way as we were discussing to finish our academic year, this year 2023, that has been so important for our teachers of kids. So many thanks for joining us in this session. I promise that you will have a lot of fun, but you will also reflect, no? Because that is, I think, the purpose of this meeting. You will have also many practical ideas, and what is better than having them from Sarah, who is an expert on the field of teaching young learners. So Sarah, on behalf of the Britannico, thank you so much for being with us again today in this session. And please, me and all the team from the studies area and our Britannico teachers, we welcome you on this last session for our teachers of kids. Many thanks.
Thank you very much, Gina. What a lovely introduction. And hi, everybody. Hello again. It's lovely to be invited once more to give a session for you. I hope the next one will be in Peru, perhaps, who knows, rather than online. What to say, that would be nice. Anyway, we had our first session at the beginning of the year where I introduced English Code, and we discovered how to make our teaching practices innovative, how to motivate students with this course. We looked at the idea that creative and innovative approaches to teaching will bring about creative and innovative learners. And so this is going to be part 2 of it. Where we're going to go back, we're going to reflect, and I want to hear you a lot, because I know that you're a very lovely crowd, and I know you enjoy participating. So this session will not be different to any of the others, and it will be seriously interactive. So I want you to be reflecting upon your teaching. Let me know your thoughts in the chat box. If you've got any questions, you want to answer any questions, you've got the chat box to do that, okay? So I know most of you, I suppose, have started using English Code already. Is there anyone here who has not used English Code yet? Everyone using English Code? Fabulous. Okay, so we will look at things like what the positive aspects of English code are in your teaching, inspire those who are just getting into terms with English code towards what are the interesting parts of it, the features of it, and how it's changed your way of teaching children, how important it is to make your lessons practical and hands-on using innovative projects like the ones in English code. So I want to hear a lot about this. So this is what we're going to be doing today. I'm going to start by introducing the reflection questions that I will ask you to think about throughout the session, and you will be answering nearer to the end. We're going to be looking at PBL, which means project-based learning, which is the foundation of English code for each of the units. Each of the units is a project. Okay, it's all right if you haven't used it yet. The idea is that this should be inspiring so that you actually want to use it when you do get to put your hands on it. So don't worry about it. Remembering future skills, we talked about that before, and how important future skills are to your children's development. The features of English code that are most important, the strongest features, and how they've impacted your teaching. And I will give you some tips for classroom management as well, because all this above cannot work well if you haven't got good classroom management skills. There's a lot of hands-on stuff, children moving around. It's not just sitting and being static. So there is a lot of classroom management that goes into it as well. And so finally, we'll come back to those reflection questions, and I'm going to ask you to be answering those questions. Okay, so let's start with those questions. These are the ones that I want you to think about, and then at the end, I'm going to be asking you to share. So first question will be, how has your teaching changed since you started using English code? How has it changed your view of teaching young children? So this is a bit more philosophical, if you want, a bit more theoretical than the first question. The first question is much more practical. Number 3, how important is it to make your lessons practical, hands-on, and fresh using an innovative approach? Number 4, are your learners developing a more creative and innovative mindset? Do you think that that is happening as a process? Maybe it's not something that you can see as a strong feature just yet, but maybe it's something that you feel like they're starting to develop, it's starting to be transmitted. And number 5, what is your favorite feature or a favorite activity that you may have tried, or a development opportunity that you have found in English code? Okay, so those are the ones that you can start thinking about throughout this session, and you might start getting some ideas from what we're going to be discussing as well. So I mentioned in the first webinar that English code has a very strong foundation in innovation, and I really do believe that it's the most innovative series that you can find in the market at the time being. So there's the coding mindset, there's communication, there's STEAM, there's creativity, there's critical thinking, there's collaboration, and of course there's project work. And we said that all these are related to what we feel that children have in common with innovators. If you remember, we can go back to that first webinar. I asked the question, what do innovators and children have in common? And you said that kids are naturally curious and creative. You said that children love solving problems. You said that they're critical thinkers and they can come up with new solutions to problems, and they like answering to problems and finding solutions and cracking codes. So these were all things that we talked about in the first webinar, and that is what makes up an innovative approach. So we want to preserve that skill set that children already come with and keep working on from there, allow them to practice all these inbuilt set mentality that they already have with their curiosity, with their creativity, and we want to foster and encourage it. So there's project work. Project work is a huge feature in English code. So we're going to have a little look at this. It's a great vehicle for innovative practice. So we're going to analyze this concept. So in the chat box, please, what is PBL, project-based learning? What is it? I'm sure you have been working with projects even before English code. each of the units in English Code is a project in itself. So what would you say are the characteristics of project-based learning? What would you say it is? What do you know about it? Okay, lovely. Learning by doing something, hands-on. These are good answers. Yes, excellent. What else? What else is a project? That's a difficult question. Okay. Oh, there we go. Good. Students learn by actively engaging in real world and personally meaningful projects. That's lovely. Engaging in real world and meaningful projects, group work, creative outcomes. Excellent. We've got some good keywords there as well. But just to help you out, I have some little questions. Is a project in terms of project-based learning? So not to confuse project-based learning with a project, because a project could even be just a craft, for example. There are course books that say project, and actually it's a craft. So you can do that in 10 minutes. Okay, so I'm not talking about that kind of project, that short little project. I'm talking about project-based learning as a big approach. Okay, so is project-based learning the project usually long or short? What would you say? Long, Rosanna. I like your answer. Yes, because you're going to go in depth. You're going to do research. You're going to find out about something. So it's not going to be anything very short. In English Code, one project is 1 unit of work. It goes from the beginning of the unit to the end of the unit when you have that creative outcome that Zaira was talking about. Is it connected or unconnected? Do the things connect together? Or are they split things? Yes, Julio, it's connected. Everything is connected together. There's a link. So that makes sense, doesn't it? It's meaningful, as someone else said as well. Is it going to be superficial or is it going to be in-depth? In-depth, Anna. Yes, it's going to be in-depth. We're going to try and find out a lot about this subject. We're going to try and answer a question because there's always going to be a big question that we want to answer. And we have to find a way to give evidence of this answer or show something or have a product. So it's going to be very much in-depth. Would you say inquiry-based or there's going to be transfer of knowledge? What do you think? In an ideal world. Inquiry, Rosanna. Transfer of knowledge. Okay. So I would say in an ideal world, we're talking about inquiry, yeah, in a project. Say Anna's saying both. So in an ideal world, I would say inquiry. A project is always based on inquiry. You want to find out about something. There's a question to answer. So you need to do research. You need to find out about it. So there's always going to be a lot of inquiry. Now, you said this is real world situations, real world projects. True, but it's in a classroom, in between those 4 walls of a classroom. So at the same time, there are going to be some artificial parts of our projects because it can't be exactly 100% real world, can it? It can't be 100% authentic, but we try to make it as authentic as possible, as real world as possible, but still there is going to be some artificial bits in it. So the same thing happens with this. There's going to be a lot of inquiry, but at the same time, the teacher is probably going to try at some time to transfer some of that knowledge or some of those skills to the students. That's why there's a teacher and students. Yeah. So good answers, everyone. Authentic, or is it fabricated mainly by the teacher? What would you say? Both, Jessie. I would say that too. In an ideal world, we want a project to be authentic. Yes, these activities that we're going to do are going to be designed to answer a question or solve a problem, and generally will reflect the types of learning and the types of work that people do in the everyday world outside the classroom. But it's going to have to be a little bit fabricated because, again, we're in between those 4 walls of a classroom. There is a teacher. We've got students who are underage, so they can't just do it the way they want to do it. Otherwise, it needs to be fabricated in some way, either by the teacher or even the course book. which tells us what we're going to be doing, what the question is, and how we're going to get there. Yeah, so it is a little bit fabricated as well. Is it mission-based? Is there a mission, a challenge, something meaningful for the students to hold on to? Or is it completely teacher-led? Is it, do this because I'm telling you to do this, I'm the teacher? Okay, Julio, we want it to be mission-based. Yes, totally. We want to grab our students' attention. We want to grab their interest, and we want there to be a mission, something that they want to work towards. Not just do that because I'm asking you to. Open your book at page 37. It's the teacher asking the student. There's no mission. It's just, I'm just going to do what I'm supposed to do because I'm going to be a good girl or a good boy. I open my book. There's no mission there, okay? There are moments that we're going to do that, of course, because we're doing this through a book, but there is a mission towards what we want to achieve in the end. Fabulous. Product or process? What do you think is more important in project-based learning? Product or process? We've got process and we've got both. Okay, so we said, and we've got process. Okay, we've got a long unit of work that is the whole project. It's going to start from the beginning and lead towards the end point where we have the product, but there's all that process, isn't there? So all that process is going to be really important, because without the process, we cannot get to the product. So it's really important to have that driving question that will lead us to the product. But then the product is important too, because it answers the question. And that is the mission in the end, isn't it? So the product is a really important thing, and probably your students feel that the product is the most important thing. But you as a teacher, you know that the process is really important, because otherwise they wouldn't be able to get to the product. Active or passive? What are the students doing? Are they active or are they passive in this kind of work? Sophia, yes, they're going to be active, always active, okay? There are moments where maybe you say, you grab their attention, listen to me, I've got something to explain or whatever, fine. But what we want them to do is something with that information that you are giving them. If you do give them that transfer of knowledge, okay, fine, but they have to do something with that knowledge, do something with those skills. So they're always going to be active. Is it learning by doing, or is it reading a text, for example? Learning by doing, yes. We might read texts, of course, to inquire, to find out about it, to do some research. But what we really want is do something with that which we read about. We're going to do something with it now. Knowledge creation or knowledge recollection? Is the main point to recollect knowledge, to know all the facts? Or is it to do something with the facts? Is it creation? What do you think? Both again, Sophia. Rosanna says creation. Okay, and a bit of recollection. Okay, yeah, I mean, you need to do the recollection. You need to do the inquiry. That's why we said, first we said it's inquiry-based. So we can't say there's no knowledge recollection, is there? Because if you're doing some inquiry, you're learning those facts, you're learning the information. But then again, do something with that information. Create. Okay, the knowledge needs to be used for something, and that is the mission. So see how everything is connected, even in these questions. Ownership or imposition? Are the students feeling ownership, or is it imposed by someone else and do what I tell you to do? Hopefully there's ownership. Yes, Anna, ownership sounds better. Yes, and that's what they should feel if there's a mission. If I'm just telling them what to do, how to do it, give them the answers, spoon feed them, there is no ownership. They're just doing what they're supposed to do and just being good. Ownership means they take it on board. They're going to be trying to find the answer to this question. That mission is important to them, and that challenge. So yes, I would say ownership. But again, there is a little bit of artificiality because we're in a classroom. So there will be a few things that are imposed. They can't just choose how they're going to do everything or do the things that they want to do in their own way. There may be limits to that. So there may be things that are imposed, of course, because we're in a classroom setting. Good. So is it clearer now what PBL is? And if I go to a quote, you'll see how complicated it sounds. Listen to this. It's a systematic teaching method that engages students in learning important knowledge and 21st century skills through an extended student-influenced inquiry process structured around complex, authentic questions and carefully designed products and learning tasks. I'm already exhausted from just reading that. That sounds really complicated, really tiring, doesn't it? But don't worry, it's not that bad, I promise you. And it's nothing that is too different from what people are actually used to. Think about the olden days. Even Confucius or Aristotle were proponents of learning by doing. Socrates talked about how to learn through questioning, through inquiry, and through critical thinking. John Dewey was grounded in experience and learning that is driven by student interest. He argued for active experiences. So as humans, the concept of learning by doing is innate. It is intuitive. Think back to your days as a child. You were learning about the world around you by doing things, and your perceptions were formed by your 5 senses. When, for example, you accidentally place your hand on a hot stove, your finger burns. You learned the hard way that a hot stove will cause a burn. In essence, you learn by doing, and you remember your lesson well, not just because your parents say to you, don't touch the stove because you'll get burnt. That doesn't mean so much. What really means a lot is touching a hot stove and being burnt. Of course, we don't need to go that far to learn something, but you get the idea, I suppose. Piaget also talked about how we make meaning from experiences at different stages in different ages, and how individuals build on what they know by asking questions, by investigating, by interacting with others, by reflecting on these experiences. But the modern project-based learning approach is attributed to a woman named Lillian Katz. Katz is with a K and a Z at the end, Katz. And it involves learning by doing, being hands-on, interactive, an experiential approach, where children are supposed to be creating a product throughout that process and try out ideas in collaboration to answer a question. Okay. And actually, we all know a lot about projects, even though at the beginning you found it a bit hard to say what a project was. We all do projects all the time. It's a project-based world. Whether it's, let me ask you, what do you think? What do you think is a project in the real world? What do you do in your life that is a project? Not the units in English code, just think about life now. What is a project? Okay, having goals? Yeah, your goals are projects, aren't they? Having objectives, your plans. Okay, what kind of plans or what kind of goals, what kinds of objectives do you have in life that you would say, this is a project for me? Studies, absolutely. What else? Traveling. Yes, if you're going to travel, it's a whole huge project, isn't it? Thinking about where we're going to go, what we need to take, do we have to learn the language, etc. Getting a job, getting a home, a degree, those are all big projects, Anna. Yes, absolutely. Learning, yes, Farida, learning anything is a project. So I'm going to put my mind to this. How am I going to learn it? What am I going to do? Am I going to go on a webinar? Is it going to be a face-to-face course? Is it going to be at school? What am I going to do? Zaira, promoting. What do you mean by promoting, Zaira? Okay, while Zara answers, what? Okay. Okay, yes, promotion at a job, for example. If you get promoted, you've got a big project on your hands. Yeah, absolutely, a big project. Yeah. So perhaps things like, I want to decorate a room in my home. That's a big project. I have to think, what do I want to do? Maybe I draw a plan of the room and I say, okay, I'm going to put this here. I'm going to decorate it with that there. What do I need to buy? I need to make a checklist of all the things that I need to buy. I need to go to the shop, organize myself to go to the shops, go and buy all the things I need, come back home, do the decorating. Maybe I need to paint a wall. What color will I paint it? It's a big project to decorate a room in your house. Planning a trip. Organizing a big Christmas dinner with lots of people. You need to plan that ahead and think what you're going to do and then put it into practice. There's the process of planning and there's the product in the end with your Christmas dinner. Launching a space shuttle, important things like that as well. But then in everyday life, it's also there. For me, preparing a teacher training session is a project. This was a project. It was a lovely project to plan for you. Designing a yearly plan for teaching English is also a project. So we have projects all around us all the time. So we know what they are. We know how to make them work. And you see how they're all hands-on. We always have to do things, not just know things, but do things. So in every project, there is a driving question. A driving question drives the unit. It's what leads the direction. It leads and connects the whole unit to reach the end with that final product. So to be able to answer this driving question or to solve a challenge, you need to learn all this that's in this unit. That's how it's driving us through the unit to get to the end. Do you remember the session that we had on lesson planning? And this is a slide from that session about lesson planning. And step 1 was to identify the learning objectives. You said objectives in the chat box when I asked about projects as well. And when you identify learning objectives, what you're thinking about is where you want your students to go. It answers the question, where do I want my students going? So even the most basic type of lesson plan will have something similar to a driving question. And I remember I showed you this from level 2 to look at different features of English code. We looked at this unit, lost and found. And the driving question is which? Which is the driving question on this page? Can you find it? Can you spot the driving question? Aha, let's see. Okay, there, Helen, how can I make a class museum? Yes, that's the driving question. That's the big question that we want to answer throughout this unit, okay? To be able to create that class museum, we need to learn all these things. It might be language, it might be content, it might be vocabulary, grammar, it might be concepts of the world around us. There are lots of things that we need to learn. What is a museum like? So we need to learn all this to be able to get that to that final point, okay? So the driving question has provided the need or the mission or the challenge, okay? Which is applicable to something real that your students will do hands-on. Not just learn the language because the teacher says so, or write something on the board and ask you to copy it out, but because there is a reason to do so. Because remember, we're going to be making a class museum, so we need to do all this, okay? So when you have a project on your hands, what you're going to find first is the driving question. That's the big question that is going to be challenging. It's going to frame your work, and it's something to solve or to answer. What you're going to have next is the need to knows. What do we need to know to be able to answer this? What you need to know is the language, the knowledge, the content, everything you need to learn to be able to end up answering that question. You might have some research to do. You want to inquire. You want to ask other questions, read, watch something, listen. You need to plan within your project. How are we going to create the class museum? So they're going to be thinking, collecting objects for the museum, for example, writing lists of what they need or what they want. They need to visualize, how will we create this class museum? What will it look like? What else do we need for it? And that's going to carry on to creating. Once they've planned it, then they create it. They design it, they arrange the room, they make things, they construct. Maybe they write something related to that. there's a moment of show and tell, because this creation that you want at the end of your project is going to be something for others. So you want it to be public in any way possible. It could be them doing it in your classroom and you taking photos and then displaying those photos. It doesn't necessarily mean that you always have to have parents coming into your classroom, because sometimes teachers get a bit anxious about that moment. But if you can invite parents in, fine. Maybe you want to do it for another class, or maybe just the head of the school. Or so you've got different ways of sharing, displaying, or presenting to an audience. You might send photos to the parents, or social media, or create a newsletter about it. Okay, it doesn't always have to be inviting parents to the classroom. Yeah. So this was the last page of the project, where you could see what students are actually going to have to do. And at the bottom of the page, what students are going to have to learn to be able to create this class museum. So see how it all makes sense. So when you look at that project, we looked at this one in the first webinar. Do you remember it? Do you remember this project? Tell me if you remember this project, or shall I remind you of it? And has anyone used it? Maybe someone here has used it already. Shall I remind you of it? Okay, so step one, you've got the research. So you want to know what you should put in your museum. Think of themes for the museum, what you want to display, think of groups of things, and choose a name for your museum. It might be our museum of old toys, or our museum of liquids and solids. So they can say, I've got an idea, a museum of rocks, for example. Step two is the planning. What will our museum look like? So they need to clear a space in the classroom, think about how to make it look interesting, collect the items, decide how to arrange the items, things like these marbles are solids, and maybe writing those labels. We've got marbles, they're hard and round, they're beautiful. The big things go here and the small things go there. Step number three is creating the class museum. So they need to arrange the items at that moment, make the labels. This rock is old. It's from Lucy's garden. And step four is show and tell. So they show their museum to their friends and talk about the items. Maybe they can invite other classes to the museum. And these are the kind of things that they will say. This is an owl, it's silver, it's mine. Or look at this car, it's new and gold. So if we analyze this, what do you think? Is this project learner-centered? Is there any learning through doing? And is there active participation? Are the students doing things? Are they involved? Are they engaged? What do you think in a project like this? Or are they passive? Is it the teacher organizing the museum? Fully engaged. Lovely. Is it all connected? Does everything relate to the other things? Or are they just splash and sploshes of different stuff that we don't really know the meaning of it? Yes, it's connected, Isabel. Of course it is. Is it long or short? We started from the first page of the unit, and then I showed you the last page of the unit. It's going to be long, right? Yeah, Sonia, fabulous, excellent. And is it authentic in any way? Is it authentic in any way? Yes, Sophia, it is authentic because it reflects something that people do outside the classroom. There are people who create museums. There are people who go and do this job, and they think about the objects that are going to go in the museum, and they create the labels for the museum, and they think about the arrangement and where they're going to put everything in the space. So it is authentic. It reflects something that people do outside the classroom. Is there ownership? Are students feeling ownership for all this? Yes, they're taking their own objects, talking about the objects that they've got, and there is creation. They're creating the class museum. So this project does fall into the project-based learning approach because all this is happening. Now we've got a question from Helen. Let's see if we can help Helen. Sometimes we have more than 20 students. So it's kind of difficult to arrange a space for each museum. So what I did was to create a document in which they will have to draw 8 objects, write their names and the description of each of them, and then present it to their peers. Is that a good idea? Yes, Helen, that's a fabulous idea. You know what? It's really important that you can adapt anything you've got in a book to your own situation and your own context. You might not be able to do things exactly as it is presented in a book. It cannot be ideal for everyone all the time. So that is excellent thinking, Helen. Go ahead and grab your books and think, can I do this? Can I not? How can I adapt it? That is excellent. That is just perfect. They can draw the objects, or maybe they can bring little objects. Maybe you say they have to be small, they can't be big. So it has to be museums of small things because we don't have enough space, and that's fine too. You can always find a way to do it. Thank you so much for sharing that, Helen, because it's really useful for everyone, because there might be someone there thinking, oh, but I've got 20 students. How am I supposed to be doing that? And you've given them a good, some good food for thought to think of how to adapt things. And you always need to do that. So that's great, a great point, Helen. Thank you very much for sharing that. And if anyone has any other questions or anything to share, please shoot. So remember when we looked at the good lesson, we talked about it being adaptable and flexible. We talked about the lesson having clear objectives, having a variety of activities and skills and interaction and materials, catering for individual learning styles, so having different things to do within that project. And it has enjoyable content, something that will grab your students' attention. And all that actually happens in a good project as well, not only in a good lesson, okay? And Scott Thornbury had said, that I shared with you in the last webinar about lesson planning, that a good lesson shares features with other forms of arts as well, but also good films, because they have a plot, a theme, a rhythm, a flow, and the sense of an ending. And that's what happens in a project as well, not just one lesson, but it has to happen throughout a project. They have to have a plot. That's why it's all connected. The theme is underlying everything. There is a rhythm. We sometimes do vocabulary for that project. We sometimes do grammar. We sometimes do a song, and we sometimes do a story related to that. And there's flow, and there is a sense of ending. And that sense of ending is really important in a project. That's the product. That's the final creation that is going to be creative. So we looked at future skills. Do you remember what the 4 future skills are? Can you tell me in the chat box? What were those 4 future skills? Critical thinking, says Isabel. We've got 1. Collaboration, says Helen. Creativity. There is 1 missing, isn't there? Because there's 4. Critical thinking, collaboration, creativity, and communication. Isabel, fabulous. Yes, there you go. The 4 C's of the future skills. We talked about these. And for these, we looked at code crackers, which is a lovely feature in English code. Do your students enjoy the code crackers, those of you who are using it? How do your students feel with the code crackers? I always find that students love cracking codes, don't they? So we looked at this example where they had to put the pieces together. And now let's see if you can get this other code cracker. This next code cracker is based on phonics. It's the phonics lab. And what you need to say is what comes next. So get your hands ready on the chat box to tell me what comes next. Let's see who wins the race of telling me what comes next in each one. So number 1, bug, 6, rug, taxi. What comes next? Run or ox? Run, Jessie. Why? Why run? The sound, very good. And you've even also got the clue of the colors that are around those words so that you can check that it's bug. 6 is a different sound. Rug is the same as the first one, it's blue. And taxi is the same as the second one. Yeah, 1, 1, 1, 1. Run, the vowel sound, Sonia. Yes, Number 2, pay attention. Ox, box, sun, fox. What comes next? Taxi or nut? Check again. Are you sure? Ah, okay. Who is it? Jessie. Jessie, you were first again. Jessie, you're doing right. Yes. Ox, box, sun, fox, taxi. Ah, see the colors. You've got yellow, yellow, red, yellow. Yellow are the X sounds, aren't they? Ah, yes, Syra. Got you on that one, hey? Number 3 is jug, nut, ox, run. What comes next? Box or sun? Sun, Sonia. Okay, 2 to Jessie, 1 to Sonia. You were the first ones to answer. Well done. Good. So sun would be the next one. Jug, nut have the sound. Ox hasn't. Run and sun have the sound. Yeah. Okay, lovely. Now, the interesting thing about this, not only that it's phonics, that is something that we like doing, and it's a code cracker, which makes it engaging because it's like a little competition and you have to think and understand how it's working. But the other good thing about something like this is that it's actually based on developing coding mindsets. Would you have ever thought that an activity like this was developing coding mindsets? Was that something that would come to mind when you do this, or do you think it's just phonics? Because to fulfill these tasks like this, you need to use elements that are relating to a coding mindset. Before you panic, do you know what a coding mindset means? Before you panic, I will explain in very accessible terms what this means, but I've also got a true or false for you. Let me know in the chat box. What do you think? Coding means teaching children to write complex programming. True or false? False, Rosanna, good. 2, coding means teaching children skills and the type of thinking that a programmer uses. Teaching them skills and the type of it. Ah, Anna, true. Someone else said true before Anna, I think. Who was it? No, Noelia. No, Anna. It was Anna. Yes. Number 3, coding means you need sophisticated programs. False, Rosanna. Fabulous. 4, coding can be unplugged. True or false? Unplugged means without technology. True, Rosanna. Fabulous. 5, coding means learning to put pieces together, to decode messages, and to think logically. True. Yes, it is. So if we grab this information, we can see that a coding mindset has more to do with thinking dispositions, being logical in the way we think, decoding messages, having that ability to decode messages. It has to do with skills and thinking dispositions more than actually learning to code. We are not talking about learning to code a program or a robot by saying coding mindset. We're talking about coding mindset, not actually doing the coding or the programming, okay? Because that is something that a teacher who teaches coding or programming would do, not us when we're teaching English, but we can teach them to think in that way. So why do we say that this activity is a coding mindset activity? Because you're teaching them those skills and the types of thinking that programmers use. For example, you know that computers work with 1s and 0s. This is a 1 and 0 activity. The first number 1 is bug 6 rug taxi. That means 1010. Number 2 is 1101. Number 3 is 1101 again. Okay, so that is how computers are thinking. And you're doing that logical thinking to understand what the answer is, what comes next. There is a sequence, there is a pattern, and that makes it a coding mindset skill. Okay, so what we're talking about is those thinking skills and those abilities that programmers use, or people who code are using, but not necessarily having to learn how to do it with sophisticated equipment or anything like this. So in this case, there is a logical set. You are debugging as well. Debugging only really means finding the odd one out. So if you can't think of which is the correct one, what you can do is filter the odd one out, the one that's not the one that goes in there, to find out which is the one that does. Okay, that's all it is really. And you're using algorithms. Like a computer, you're using algorithms. It's variables, those different variables. So see how interesting it is to find out that what you're doing really is something that perhaps you would have never thought about before. And the same thing happens with little songs like this one. Well, it's a little chant really, which again is from the phonics lab, related to that code cracker that we just used. And so wherever you are right now, if you are at the institute, at school, in the staff room, at home, wherever you are right now, I will be hoping that you're going to be following me with this little chant where you need to snap and clap. Okay, will you follow me? Let me know in the chat box. Will you be following me or not? I hope you will, even if I can't see you. Yes, Sophia, love you. That's it. Yes, the other Sophia as well. Anna, yes, lovely. I've got some lovely people following me. Fabulous, fabulous, fabulous. Okay, don't leave me alone here. I'll be embarrassed if you leave me alone. So can you please snap and clap, snap and clap. And what we're going to do is we're going to snap and clap to the beat, but the clap, oh, Sophia, we're going to see you doing it with me. Oh, I love you people. We're going to snap and clap to the beat, but the clap has to always fall on the word box. No other word can be a clap. Okay? All right. What's in the box? There's a fox in the box. There's an ox in the box. There's a fox and an ox in the big, big box. Ah, I caught you. Now we need to do it quicker. See if you can do it quicker. Ready, steady, go, everyone. What's in the box? There's a fox in the box. There's an ox in the box. There's a fox and an ox in the big, big box. There you go. Wonderful. Again, thank you very much, Sophia and Sophia. These Sophias are very brave. A clap, clap, clap for Sophia and Sophia. Love you. Thank you. Lovely to see you there. Okay, so this again is a coding mindset. What you're using is that because there is a logical way to do this. Okay, you have to think logically to be able to do it. It could be ones and zeros again. The boxes are the ones and the other words are the zeros, for example, like computers are programmed. So again, it's sequencing and there's a pattern. So in some of the chants and some of the songs in English code, you're already developing these kinds of thinking skills, even if you know it or not, even if you've analyzed it. What does it look like? Remember, we looked at this one in the first webinar, and we realized that this is a question and answer song in which really students are having to use thinking skills that have got to do with being very creative, because they have to guess what this is going to be. So can you tell me in the chat box, have you been using the songs in English code? Have you got any favorite songs? Do you remember any of them? Do you remember the name of it or what it was about or what unit it was in? What's been your favorite song for your class in English code these days? Or has anyone, the sports day song? Okay, fabulous. The kids love it. Yeah, fabulous. Very catchy. Lovely, lovely. Okay. So apart from the songs, you've also got the story lab. Which stories have you been using? Do you remember any that is memorable for you? Your favorite story in your class or anything that stood out that you remember? Tell me what it was about if you can't remember the name of it. And also, did you do any of the STEAM experiences? Which of the STEAM experiences do you remember? I'm really interested about this one because I really love STEAM. Which was the most memorable STEAM experiment that you did? Have you been able to do any of them? Had any opportunities to do any of these? Yes, okay. In all classes, I start with the song as well as the reminder of the project. So at the end of the unit, it's not that new what they have to create. That is fabulous, Helen. Lovely, lovely tip for everyone. Starting with the song in all classes so that you can remind them of the project as well at the end of the unit. So it's not new. Yes, that's a great idea, Helen. And that makes it even more connected, doesn't it, when it's in every class, in every lesson. So that makes it really connected. Fabulous tip. I love that. Okay, so in this unit, we had a STEAM experience about how liquids change. Okay, did anyone get to do this one? Let me know in the chat box if anyone got to do this one. Helen, did you do this one? How do some liquids change? Okay, how did it go for you? Was it challenging for you, for the children? Was it okay? They did it in groups. That's fabulous, even better, so that there's collaboration. So you did it a little bit like a competition. Good. That's always nice too. I mean, children like competitions as well, and they get involved in it as well, don't they? Yeah, that's lovely, Helen. Fabulous. Did it work? Did the experiment work in the end or not? Because it's an experiment, you know, scientists do experiments all the time, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. Did it work for you? They were waiting for the experiment to work, and did it? Yeah, okay, good. All right. Because this one is one of the quite difficult ones, because this has got to do with creating a non-Newtonian liquid. That is already like a big name, isn't it? A non-Newtonian liquid. If I read that, I get really scared. They completed the exercise too. Okay, yeah, that's fine. Good. So you didn't have to say what they had to do. They did it on their own. Good. That's excellent. You're giving them the ownership. You're giving them that active participation, and not just you telling them and giving them indications about what they've got to do, but actually giving them a little bit of freedom as well. That's fabulous. Yeah, great. So sometimes these activities can be quite challenging because you've got a lot of content in there, right? So you've got to know a little bit about what's happening in the science experiment or the engineering or the maths, and we're not professional scientists or engineers, are we? So sometimes it can get a little bit complex, can't it? Do you remember that we said that STEAM is an integrated approach to learning, and it celebrates creative thinking, experimenting, it celebrates problem solving, and children are always going to be hands-on in a STEAM activity. So it sometimes can get difficult when the content is not something that we know too much about, and students have to actually get hands-on, in this case with the corn flour and the bowl and the metal tray and the water and the spoon. So it can be quite complex. But one important thing that actually, Helen, you mentioned it at the beginning in a different context with a different kind of activity, is that you need to be adaptable, and you need to know how to adapt things to your own context and to your own situations when you need to. Like you said, there are things that we did individually, there are things that we did in groups, and that's fine too. Or maybe we drew it instead of bringing all the objects into the classroom, and that's fine too. So whenever you can be adaptable and flexible, do it. Do whatever you think is going to be better for your group. Don't just do what the book says because the book says it, because in the end you'll say, oh no, how am I going to do this? Or this didn't work. And perhaps you could have anticipated that. So anticipate things and think about what is going to be the best way for your class, okay? Maybe you want to come at the English Code already has little videos that explain the concepts. It has explanations for the teacher. But if you need to go further from there and find other ways of giving the examples, you can do that too. So I found some quite interesting videos on YouTube about non-Newtonian liquids. So when you have to explain this and they want to see it in a different light, maybe you could use some other kinds of videos as well. Just to remind you of this, this was a STEAM experience that leads us to understand how some liquids change, and that there's some liquids that don't stay as a liquid all the time, but it depends on the force that you give to that liquid. So with corn flour and water, you mix that up and you make a suspension, a mixture that's called a suspension, which is also known as oobleck. Have you ever heard of oobleck? That's a strange word, isn't it? But some people call it oobleck or suspension. So it looks like a liquid. You mix that cornstarch and that water and it looks like liquid. But then when you put your force onto it, it goes solid, which is really interesting because the molecules react in a certain way when you punch it or when you squeeze it or when you put force onto it. So your students are going to try this out. They're going to do it in class, but you can also show them other videos to make it more comprehensible. For example, this one. Look how interesting this is for your students.
We're creating the biggest oobleck pool I have ever seen. This requires a 13-ton cement mixer, 9 tons of oobleck, and a 25-foot-long pool.
3, 2, 1, go for it.
What do you think will happen? Will he sink in this mixture? Or do you think he'll be able to run across? What do you think will happen, Sophia? They can run on it. What do you think? Can he run across? Or will he sink into this mixture? What do you think will happen? And this is something you should do with your students. Stop the video, ask them to predict. That's what scientists do. Oh, are you all worried about it? Shall we check and see what happens? Let's check and see what happens.
Success!
So you can see the pressure of the foot striking the surface causes the liquid to thicken enough to support the runner, but the substance will not stay solid for long. Once the runner stops lifting his or her feet, force stops being transferred to the oobleck. And when the particles of cornstarch are no longer squeezed together by force, water fills in the gaps between the particles, and the oobleck returns to a more liquid state. It seems the only way not to get stuck or fall through the oobleck is to continue to apply force to the particles. Next up, bicycles.
So if you stay still on that, you will sink. But if you keep putting some force on it in different motions, that's when you can run across it or go across it or play football on top of it. Or let's see what happens with the bike. What do you think will happen with the bike? Do you think a bike will be able to go over it, or do you think it will sink? What do you think will happen? You think it will sink, Rosanna? Let's see.
Are we ready for our bicycle? Yeah. You and I agree, my friend. So he's got to build up enough speed. But here we go.
To go faster, he pedals the bike hard, which creates enough downward force to make the liquid behave like a solid. But let's see if entering from a standstill with far less pedaling and speed will change things for our fearless rider.
What do you think? Do you think this will change things for him or not? See, he said you need to pedal fast to go over it. But now if he doesn't do that, what do you think will happen? Will he sink? Will he get stuck? Or will he be able to go across? He started sinking.
Much for the fancy footwork. Our bicyclist doesn't pedal hard, so there's no downward force to harden the oobleck, and the bike sinks and gets stuck.
There you go. You see, you can make it really interesting by showing things in the real life done outside the classroom walls. And see, this is a great experiment, and it's done in a really interesting way with different kinds of forces being applied to that suspension. And there's an explanation behind it as well that can help them to understand. I don't think, you would be having a conversation with anybody and you would say, oh yeah, because you know that cornstarch and water will, if you mix that together, it can be a liquid or a solid. It's not something that you would probably talk about in your normal day-to-day life. So it doesn't matter that they don't comprehend the concept of it 100%, because maybe we don't even understand. How does that happen? We've got the explanation, the particles and this and that, but We don't exactly understand it, perhaps, because we're not scientists, but there is something going on there. And that's understanding the real world as well, and understanding the world around us, even though we can't exactly explain it in perfect terms. You've got other videos that you can find, loads of them, where the explanations are really clear. So I'll just show you a tiny little bit.
So what is cornstarch mud and how does it work? Well, cornstarch mud is a non-Newtonian fluid, which means it behaves differently than you, or Newton, would expect. Here's cornstarch, and here's water. Cornstarch is made up of large, blocky molecules like this. Water is made up of much smaller, rounder molecules like this. When you put them together, it looks something like this. It all has to do with how the molecules slide past each other. When you put light pressure or slow pressure on the mud, the water molecules and cornstarch molecules have time to shift out of the way. But when you put a sudden pressure on it, the water molecules squirt out of the way, but the cornstarch molecules don't have enough time. So you get a section that's nearly all cornstarch, which acts as a solid.
There you go. So that explanation is very, very clear, isn't it? The other one seemed more interesting. It was fun to predict what was going to happen and everything. But I think that explanation, being so visual, would be much better for your students to understand. So here they try it again, and they're trying to see what happens if they just stand on it, and whether they start sinking, or whether they can walk across it, or what kind of force they can put onto it. Okay, so you can make it really interesting by adding more things to it, or adapting, or doing it in different ways to help your students learn these concepts.
So
Don't forget about that. So now for classroom management, you know, all this can get complicated. As I said, you've got lots of students, maybe 20 like Helen in your classroom. You need to find a way to make things work, and you might have to switch things around a little bit, but also you want good classroom management in place. Sometimes you might feel that you get a little bit out of control with the projects and the activities and students moving around and things. Yeah. So Helen, okay, that's great. Helen is adding to my list of call and response. This is called call and response, where the teacher says something and the students answer back with something else that you want to train them to do. So Helen's is teacher says 1, 2, 3, and students say 3, 2, 1. Yeah, or teacher says eyes to me, and students say eyes on you. Thank you, Helen, for adding. What do you think the answer is to hands on top? What would students say if you say hands on top? Do you know what the answer is to that? Everybody stop. Okay, hands on top, everybody stop. Yeah, you don't want to teach these when you need your students' attention. You want to teach these when your students are receptive for you to teach them to them. So when you're doing the beginning of your lesson, you greet your students, you have a little chat about the weekend or whatever, you tell them what you're going to do today, you look at the schedule for the day, whatever, or you teach something, and then you teach them this. You train them to be able to answer in this way. When I say hands on top, you say everybody stop. Okay, so you practice it a few times with them. Hands on top, and they say everybody stop. And then while they're still receptive, you do a different activity, something on the board with the whole group, and suddenly you say hands on top, and they have to remember everybody stop. So that's just the practice for it. When they are working in their STEAM project or the project itself or doing a speaking activity and you need to grab their attention, you say hands on top, they say everybody stop. And then you say it again in a lower voice because some are still chatting or working and didn't hear what you said. So you say it again, but in a lower voice because you've got the attention of some. Then you say it again, hands on top. And they say, everybody stop. But there are still some students who are still working or talking or doing something different. So you say it a third time in a whisper, because most of the students are now paying attention to you, and everybody can imitate the rest if they haven't heard you. So you say, and they say, and then you're on that note that quiet and calm note to keep working or concentrating on something different or listening to your indications. What is the answer to Scooby-Dooby-Doo? Does anyone know what you would answer? In the program, in Scooby-Dooby-Doo, they would say Scooby-Dooby-Doo, and what else would they say after that? No, Helen, that's a song. That's a pop song. Sophia, where are you? That's it. Scooby-Dooby-Doo, where are you? Would be the original answer to that question. So again, you teach it 3 times. Higher, very, very loud, then a bit quieter, and then as a whisper. And then everyone is on a quiet note to continue. What about hocus pocus? Hocus pocus, everybody focus, Isabel. That's right. But remember, always teach these when students are receptive, and then you can use it when you really need it. You don't teach it when you need it. That's late, okay? Yes, class. Yes. Fabulous, Noelia. Thank you for that. Wonderful. Okay, so now for classroom management, for things to go smoothly, what you want to do is you want to CBG. Any idea what CBG means? You want to CBG. What do you think that means? Catch them being good. Yes, Anna. Catch them being good. Yes, always catch students being good. Everyone has something good to be praised about, even if it's not exactly the aim of today, which was the verb to be. You know, you might have a student who is still not grasping the verb to be. Fine, but that's not the only thing that your students can be praised on. Maybe that student has been a very good boy or girl today. Maybe that student has helped someone today. Maybe that student was listening very carefully today, or maybe they were very neat in their books. So always catch students being good. They've always got something that you can catch them being good for. Give maximal attention to appropriate behavior and minimal attention to inappropriate behavior. Don't expose them or humiliate them or give them that attention that they might be seeking. It's the other way around. Don't give the negative attention, at least. Be loud and clear about what is good and what you value, and look mostly for what they're doing right than what they're doing wrong, and acknowledge what they're doing right. Speak to them privately about what they're not doing totally right, okay? So you want to give them concrete praise as well, exactly why they're being praised, not just very good, but hey, John, you've been very neat today. Congratulations. Or, wow, Maria, you're getting really good at rhyming. Or excellent, Sophia, your snapping and clapping is getting better and better. Okay, so giving them concrete praise, using their names to give them the praise, and make sure that you praise them equally. Everyone has something to be praised about, so use a praise checklist. Tick. Because sometimes we don't realize that there's one kid who isn't getting praised, hasn't been praised for ages, okay? Find that one thing that you can praise the kid about, okay? And until we have it written down and we can actually see it for ourselves, sometimes we don't even realize, and months go by and that kid is still not being praised for anything, and everyone has something to be praised about. So find that, keep your eyes out for praiseworthy behavior from everyone, okay? You might want to use recognition items or recognition activities, and that's fine too. Sometimes you use stars or stickers or stamps, which are individual, but maybe a group recognition always works very well as well. So that, and rather than showing the negative, what you do is show the positive again. So you have a positive jar where you have amazing jobs that they've been doing, or helpful hands, or any positive things that you see in your classroom being good today or whatever. So even individual efforts go into this collaborative jar. And when the collaborative jar is full, that's when you put on a party or a show or some kind of reward that your students enjoy, a longer playground or watching your favorite video or having a pajama day and everyone can come in their pajamas, or popcorn party or whatever you want, a fabulous Friday. Helen says, what I do is to create groups in every class as they choose their leaders. Every class, the leader changes, and I tell them that they have to, in some way, help and supervise their friends. Yes, Helen, that is an excellent idea, because you're giving them responsibilities and that you're giving them that feeling of ownership. So that is an excellent idea. You want to give them roles or responsibilities and they feel important and they feel that you know, that's a big job. And it always helps very much with those students who tend to get distracted as well, if you give them a job, because that narrows their attention down to something that is valuable and something important in the classroom. So you can use that with everyone. Don't only give it to those who are behaving well. Make sure you're giving it to those who sometimes don't behave well as well, because maybe that's what they need. They need some attention. They need something important to do, some responsibility. They choose the leader. Fantastic. And again, though, if they're choosing the leader, make sure you've got a checklist and see that none of them is ever left out, you know, forever. They're all the leaders at some point. That's the important thing. Fabulous, Helen. I like those ideas. Thank you again for sharing. Very nice. So nearing the end of this webinar, I would like to ask you, after having looked at all these different ideas, when do you think we learn something better? What factors have to be present so that we can learn something better? What do you think? Sophia, understand it and be able to use it. That's good. You need to understand things, don't you? Comprehension is really important. Comprehensible input as well, and being able to use it or to tell others about it. That's great, Sophia. And that is a big part of projects. Project-based learning is based on the idea that at the end, you will have a creation or a product and you can talk about it. You can show it and you can talk about it. So being able to explain something to others means that you have really, really understood it, right? Helen, with mistakes, well, yes, always. Yes, we always learn from mistakes. Yes, absolutely. Jessie, there's interaction, collaboration, interaction, communication. When students share, absolutely, because there's ownership. If they're sharing, it means there's ownership. They're sharing what they did with others and they feel proud of it. When we are open and relaxed, that's good. Yes, we want to be open to new ideas, new things, being receptive and being relaxed so that there's no stress, no anxiety. That's important too. And for that to happen, the students need to feel security. They need to feel safe in the safe environment where they can actually do the best they can, where they can feel like they can share, like Noelia was saying, where they can interact, where they can make mistakes, where they can understand things and be able to tell others about it. So see how what Anna is saying really rounds up what all the rest of you are saying up top. Yes, absolutely. So I think that within a project-based approach, what makes students learn things better is that they are collaborating, as you said. There is a challenge or a problem or a mission that they take as important. They're learning by doing, by being hands-on, by being experiential, by being interactive. Jessie said interaction. It's brain-based. Project-based learning has got to do with brain-based learning as well, because this is what we do in real life. This is how our brain likes to learn things and do things. So it's very innate. It's engaging, it's exciting. You've got the hard skills and you've got the soft skills. The hard skills are the knowledge, the facts, the information, knowing things. That's the recollection of knowledge. But there's also the soft skills. What do we do with that information? Those are the soft skills. That's what we want to do. There's motivation in here. There's ownership. There's a context. Everything is connected. Things need to be connected so that your brain can learn it. That's part of brain-based learning. If it's not connected, then it's difficult for the brain to retain things. There is inquiry, there's research. That means there's a question and there's something we want to answer. So there is a need to answer something, and your students are being active because of all this that they're doing. So see how well created project-based learning is. It has all this within it, which makes us learn things better. So going back to the beginning, the teacher survey, after this whole hour and a bit that we've had, could you please tell me, in practice, how has your teaching changed in your classroom? Have a little think and write in the chat box something short about how has your teaching changed since you started using English code? Is there anything you can say is characteristic? I know it's a difficult question. Has it become more interactive? Has it become more hands-on? Has your teaching become more exciting for you or for your students? You're doing projects now, Sonia. Maybe before you weren't doing projects, and now you're doing projects with every unit. Oh, Sophia, you haven't started using it yet. Okay, okay. Okay, adaptation is crucial since not all groups are the same. Absolutely. So you need to learn to adapt things. Yes. So when you're teaching, you want to adapt. Mary says planning and adapting. Good. So perhaps you mean that you've got the plan in the teacher's book, or you are able to plan it better with the book. It's very clear. The teacher's book is very clear. So you should have all the information there. And while you're planning, you're adapting. Yes. How has it changed your view of teaching young children? Has your view of teaching young children changed in any way? Do you realize that they need more of this or that? Or there's something that is strong that young children really need? You're welcome, Sophia. I hope they're useful when you do use English code. So how has it changed your view of teaching young children? Has it changed your view in any way? Having them being more active, for example, rather than passive, or getting them hands-on rather than transferring so much knowledge to them. Okay, maybe it's food for thought. Number 3 is, how important is it to make your lessons practical, hands-on, and fresh using an innovative approach? So even if you're not using English code yet, how important do you think it is to make lessons practical and hands-on and fresh and using innovation? Very important. That way students will take part. Absolutely. You're getting them to engage more with you if you're doing things in this way, right? Yeah, rather than expecting them to be passive from the very start. Yeah. Oh, good. And do you think, okay, we've got Isabel, it enhances their understanding of subjects, but also nurtures a lifelong love for learning? That is absolutely beautiful, Isabel. I hope that's happening in your classroom, because that's beautiful. So are you more, you as a teacher, are you more curious? Do you think you're more creative in your classroom? Are you perhaps more playful with the way you're teaching? Are you solving problems in different ways? Are you being a collaborator with your students for them to learn better? Are you communicating things in different ways, using different pathways, not just the orality of explaining something and you learn it, but communicating things in different ways? Are you being risk takers yourselves? Mary says it's essential so it becomes more memorable. Yeah, that was related to the other question. And Sophia says we have to be a bit of everything. Yes, it's great if you can be this whole package. Yeah, Sophia, if you can be that package, that's great. And Farida says that students are not only learning English. Yeah, absolutely. They're learning so much more than English. So when you're thinking about young learners and how they learn, they're not just learning words. They're not just learning grammar. They're learning so many other skills while they're doing it. Yes, absolutely. And do you feel like your learners are becoming more curious about things, or more creative, or more playful? Have they been able to show a disposition towards being more creative? Have they been able to solve problems or crack the codes? collaborate or communicate or be risk takers and make mistakes, like someone said before. Noelia says that she feels like she's more creative and more of a risk taker now. That's fabulous, Noelia. That's a lovely reflection. Because I think that if you are more creative, then you are transferring that image as something valuable to your students. And they maybe slowly will become more creative. And if you're a risk taker, you can also make that visible to your students. And say, when you take a risk, say, oh, I'm not really sure about this. This makes me nervous, but I'm going to try. I'm going to be brave and do this, even though I feel a bit embarrassed, or I'm not sure how to do this, or I don't know how to draw a dog, but I'm going to draw it for you on the board because I'm explaining whatever. And I need to draw this, so I'll do it anyway. So I'm risk taking. And when you do make that explicit to your students, they get the idea that, okay, I might not be 100% perfect in English, but I can take the risk. Sophia says it depends a bit on the group. Some are super into it, others not so much. Yeah, that sometimes happens as well, Sophia. Yeah, you have different kinds of groups, different teaching styles, different contexts in different institutes or schools. So it really depends a lot on the group as well. But my suggestion for that is what came out from Helen's comment before, which is always be adaptable, okay? And think about your group and do whatever's best for your group. Maybe the way it's planned out is not the best way for your group, so change it around. Think of other ways of doing it. Maybe they really like those videos, so show them those videos, or maybe they like singing a lot, so find a song about it or whatever. So find ways of encouraging them a bit more if they're not so into it, if they're one of those groups. Good. That's lovely reflections. So those of you who are using English Code, could you please tell us in the chat box, just one word or one little sentence, what is your favorite feature of English Code? For example, the creativity, the code cracking, the story lab. Which is the favorite feature in English Code? Or which was your favorite activity that you did this year? Maybe it was a STEAM activity or a story that you did that you really enjoyed or your students really enjoyed. Or if you haven't been using English Code, could you please write in the chat box what you think your favorite feature would be or your favorite activity type would be? Helen says the project, so that the project itself is a great feature of English Code. Noelia enjoys the stories and Story Lab. Is it the stories alone, Noelia, or is it the story together with the activities that are connected to it? Like the story of the cuckoo clock, and then they had to create their own cuckoo clock. So things like that. Story Lab, again, Sonia, the experiments, the STEAM ones. Those are my favorite too, Rosa, and yeah, Sophia, the activities. It's an opportunity for us as teachers, the result of all your effort during the unit. Yes, absolutely, Helen. Yeah, because you are making a big effort to be teaching in a different way, to be creative, to be a risk taker, to be innovative. And that is absolutely a fabulous opportunity to take on, to accept that you want to teach in a different way because that's the best for your students as well. Story Lab again, the experiments, that students can do it alone, Helen says. Yes, I mean, once you can give them the ownership and the independence, the more the better. Rocio says the Story Lab to discover the language. Noelia says connected to the objectives. And Helen said, oh yeah, after a brief explanation, students can do it alone after a brief explanation. Yes, of course. You're there to support them, aren't you? So you're always going to guide them and support them. But then if you can leave them alone, that's fabulous. I remember Maria Montessori used to say that the best moment is when your students can learn and do without you actually having to be there. Of course, you're going to be there, but the greatest moment is when they can do it without you having to be there, even if you are there with them. Fabulous. Thank you very much. So I think that the first step in teaching students to innovate is making sure that educators have opportunities to be innovators themselves. So I think that's what you're doing by using this course, by accepting to be innovators and to be getting on board with all these new ideas, being creative, being risk takers, and transmitting that to your students, because the first step in teaching them to be creative and collaborators and communicators is for you to be that too. So taking that on board is an excellent opportunity for yourselves as well. So congratulations for working in that way. Thank you, everybody. Lovely. Let me know if you have any questions in the chat box, anything else to share or to comment about, and I'm here to answer any of your doubts that you might have. Thank you very much.
Sarah, let me just say that it has been a wonderful presentation. I think that everyone here, not only have they reflected upon their own teaching practices, but at the same time, they are learning a lot from you. And we really, really appreciate it. And on behalf of all the teachers, the studies area and the Britannico, we want to thank you for this wonderful, thought-provoking presentation. Massive thanks for that. I think that we are taking a lot, right? Probably here, a key word is flexibility and try to adapt things. It doesn't matter if you have a large or maybe a small group, if you're teaching in a face-to-face class or maybe in an online environment, but feel free to adapt, to change, and to try, right? Because we can make mistakes as well as our students, but the most important is that we actually try and also that we have fun when doing so.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely. So, you summarized it really nicely.
Thank you. So, from our side, Sarah, if maybe our teachers are going to, yeah, definitely, Sophia, we learn from mistakes too. So if we happen to have any further questions regarding this presentation, make sure that we will share that with you. Also for you teachers, I'm leaving the link for a very, very short survey. So if you would help me a lot, if maybe you can complete it, it would take just 1 or 2 minutes. And once again, Sarah, thank you so much for all the coordinations. I think that topic was the perfect one to close our academic year, right? And we are looking forward to working with you for the year 2024 and probably with more surprises in the meantime. So thank you so much.
I would love to. Thank you very much, Gina, for all your support. Thank you, Pearson, for always supporting us as well. And everyone for joining us today. It was lovely to have you again.
Yes. So thank you, everyone. Now you're free once you finish the survey, if you don't have any further questions, and I'll see you very, very soon. Greetings from Arequipa. Hey, nice.
Ah,
You see, we are very international, Sarah.
you are amazing, amazing.
Yes. Thank you, everyone. Have a very nice afternoon, a happy lunch, and see you very soon. Bye-bye.
Bye for now. Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.